There is a magazine page from July of 1986 that told the American public, in plain language, not to drive a particular road. Not a warning about traffic. Not a warning about tolls or construction or a bad interchange. A warning about survival. Life magazine ran a photograph of a cowboy on horseback crossing an empty stretch of U.S. Route 50 in the middle of Nevada, and the text beside that photograph quoted an advisor from the American Automobile Association who said the road was totally empty, that there were no points of interest along it, that they did not recommend it, and that no motorist should drive it unless they were confident of their survival skills. That last phrase is the one that stuck. Survival skills. For a paved federal highway. For a road marked on every map with the same black and white shield as every other U.S. highway in the country. The magazine did not call the road dangerous because of what was on it. It called it dangerous because of what was not. No towns, no services, no help. And if your car fails in the wrong place along the 287 miles that photograph was describing. The thing that decides whether you live is not your driving. It is how much water is in the back seat, and whether one other person on earth knows where you are. People still make that drive every day. Most of them are fine. That is the part worth sitting with before anything else. The road does not need most of them. It does not reach out for the careful driver with the full tank and the topped-off water jugs and the text message sent to a sister before leaving Fallon. It waits. It has always waited. And what it waits for is small. Nevada took the insult and made a slogan out of it. The man who did it was Rich Moreno, the Director of Public Relations for the Nevada Commission on Tourism between 1985 and 1992. And by his own later account, he saw the life photograph and its survival skills line and recognized a gift. That same month, July of 1986, he launched a tongue-in-cheek campaign built entirely around the word the magazine had used against the state. He printed a Highway 50 survival kit, a cartoon map with a tear-off card that travelers could have stamped in each of the towns along the route. Mail the completed card back, and the state would send an official certificate signed by the governor, a lapel pin, a bumper sticker. It certified that you had survived the loneliest road in America. Moreno printed 500 kits to test the interest, and by his account, they were gone in under a month. More than 40,000 have gone out since. The state legislature made the name official. The highway department bolted loneliest road signs to the route. A pejorative became a brand, and the brand worked, and it worked precisely because the thing underneath it was true. The joke only lands because the road really is that empty. What I want to do is set the joke down for a while and look at the mechanism underneath it. Because the survival kit is funny right up until the afternoon it is not, and the distance between those two afternoons is far smaller than almost anyone driving out there understands. Start with the geography, because on this road the geography is the entire story. U.S. Route 50 crosses Nevada for roughly 409 miles from the California line to the Utah line. The lonely core of it, the stretch the magazine was describing, runs about 287 miles between Fernley in the west and Ely in the east. According to Nevada Department of Transportation route data, in the span between Fallon and Delta, Utah, a distance of 409 miles, there are exactly 3 towns: Austin, Eureka, and Ely. 3. That same span is roughly the distance from Boston to Baltimore. Hold that comparison in your mind for a second. Picture the entire northeastern corridor between Boston and Baltimore. Every exit, every rest stop, every unbroken ribbon of gas stations and fast food and outlet malls and hospitals, and now delete all of it except 3 small mountain towns, and you begin to see the actual shape of this place. It is not a road that is inconvenient. It is a road that is structurally, deliberately, geologically alone. The land it crosses is called the Basin and Range. The highway climbs a mountain pass, drops onto a dead flat desert valley floor, runs straight across the valley, then climbs the next range, and it does this over and over and over again for the width of the state. The route crosses 17 named mountain passes. Some of them demand 8% grades and hairpin turns to reach elevations over 7,000 feet. Austin Summit sits at 7,484 feet, and the descent into Austin from the east is a steep, narrow, twisting drop that local drivers will tell you plainly is not a place to lose your brakes. In summer, the valley floors bake. In winter, the passes ice over, and the wind lifts the snow off the sagebrush and lays it across the road until the road disappears. Traffic tells you everything you need to know. In a corridor count the Nevada Department of Transportation published in 2007, the average daily traffic on Route 50 ranged from tens of thousands of vehicles a day in Carson City down to around 530 vehicles a day out near the Duckwater turnoff in the dead center. That is the number that matters. 530 cars. In an entire day. Spread across mountain passes and 100-mile valley floors, that is a vehicle every few minutes on a decent stretch and, on a bad one, nothing at all for the better part of an hour. If your car quits between two of those vehicles, you are not stuck in traffic waiting for it to clear. You are waiting to become the reason a stranger decides to slow down. Now the distances between fuel, because this is where the word survival stops being marketing and starts being arithmetic. The gaps between towns on the lonely stretch run well past 100 miles at a time. It is roughly 110 miles from Fallon to Austin. It is about 70 miles from Austin to Eureka. It is 77 miles from Eureka to Ely. And past Ely, at the far eastern edge, the road runs 162 miles to the next city, Delta, Utah, with only 2 gas stations along that entire span. A modern car on a flat interstate might return 30 miles to the gallon. That same car climbing 8% grades over 7,000-foot passes with the air conditioning running against desert heat returns meaningfully less. And a truck towing a trailer returns far less than that. The math is not difficult. But people do not do it. They see a paved highway with a federal route shield and they assume it behaves like every other paved highway with a federal route shield they have ever driven. On Route 50, that assumption is the hazard. The tank you leave Fallon with is the tank you have until Austin. And if the needle is lower than you thought when you crest New Pass, there is no station ahead that will bail you out. There is only the valley. And the valley does not sell gas. Here is what the emptiness costs, told first through the people who paid it long before the highway existed, because the terrain has not changed and neither has the price. In October of 1860, the British explorer Richard Francis Burton spent a night at a place called Sand Springs Station, a Pony Express relay stop about 26 miles east of Fallon, right beside where Route 50 runs today. The National Park Service preserves his description of what he found. Burton wrote that the water near the station was thick and stale with sulfury salts, that it blistered even the hands. He called the station house roofless and chairless, filthy and squalid, the walls open to every wind, the interior full of dust. And he noted one man there lying on the ground, crippled and apparently dying, after a horse had fallen on his chest. That was the infrastructure of this route in its first form. A poisoned well, a roofless shack, a man dying slowly on the dirt because there was nothing and no one within reach that could help him. The station was abandoned when the Pony Express folded in 1861, and the desert did what the desert does. Shifting sand from the great dune the locals call Sand Mountain buried the entire station and kept it buried for more than 100 years, until archaeologists from the University of Nevada dug it back out of the ground in the late 1970s. When they excavated it, according to Nevada historian Dennis Casanelli, the single most common artifact they recovered was broken glass from liquor bottles. Hundreds of fragments. That is how the men stationed there got through the isolation and the boredom and the fear. The land did not soften for them. It waited, and then it pulled the sand over the top of what they left behind. The point of the old station is not nostalgia. The point is that the ground is exactly the same. The bad water is still bad water. The wind still drifts the sand into 200-foot mounds. The distances between the places a human being can find help are precisely as long as they were when a falling horse could kill a man because no one was close enough to reach him. All that has changed is the machine you cross it in, and the machine has made people careless. A car with a full tank, working air conditioning, cold water in the back, and one person who knows your route and your expected arrival time is the modern version of knowing where the safe water is. It is the entire margin, and it holds right up until one small thing goes wrong, at which point the terrain reasserts, with total indifference, everything Burton wrote down in 1860. So this is what going wrong looks like on this road now. Not in theory, with names and dates and the make of the vehicle. On October 17, 2024, a driver was heading east on US 50 just west of Austin in a Hyundai Santa Fe. According to the Nevada State Police, as reported by Colo Television in Reno, at about 3:45 in the afternoon, the Hyundai crossed to the right side of the highway, struck a concrete curb, and went down a steep embankment. It overturned and came to rest in a creek bed. Both people inside were taken to a hospital. The passenger's injuries were not life-threatening. The driver died several days later. The state police withheld his name at the time, pending notification of his next of kin, and on this road, that is how a death can stay. A vehicle, a curve, an embankment, and no name attached to any of it. West of Austin means the Austin Summit Country, 7,484 feet, the steep switchbacks the whole stretch is known for. This was not the deep, empty valley. This was near a town, in daylight on a clear October afternoon. And it was still enough. Move forward and closer. June 14, 2026, near mile marker 27 on US 50 in Lander County, about 3 miles east of Austin, at 8:32 in the morning. A 68-year-old Carson City man named James Chapman was riding a black Harley-Davidson trike westbound. According to the Nevada Highway Patrol, as reported by Claus in Las Vegas and Tuku News in Reno, Chapman failed to negotiate a right-hand corner. The trike crossed the center line, ran off the left side of the road, launched off a dirt embankment, traveled down a steep ravine, overturned, and came to rest on its back facing east. Chapman sustained life-threatening injuries and was pronounced dead at the scene. His adult female passenger was flown to a regional hospital, where, as of the reports weeks later, she remained in the intensive care unit. 3 miles from a town of fewer than 200 people. Morning light. A rider on a machine he presumably knew well. The road did not weigh any of that. It offered one right-hand corner he did not complete, and a ravine positioned to receive the consequence, and that was the whole of the transaction. Notice what is shrinking as these two stories go by. The first man had a full-size SUV, a curb, an embankment, and still several days in a hospital bed before he died. The second had a 3-wheeled motorcycle, a ravine, and a single morning, and the excuse of unfamiliarity is already gone with him, because he lived in Carson City, close enough to call this stretch ordinary. Each case quietly removes a reason you might have offered yourself for why it could not be you. Not a tourist, not at night, not in ice or snow, not 100 miles from the nearest town. Just a curve and gravity, and a valley that has been collecting people since before the road was paved. And here is the third, the one that answers the objection you may already be forming, which is that these were crashes, and crashes happen on every road, and the survival kit was never really about crashes. That objection is correct. The survival kit was written about the slow death, the one that does not involve a curve at all, and this road produces those too on a schedule. On July 31, 2022, a gold Ford Fusion driven eastbound by 74-year-old Francis Fields of Ely was traveling on US 50, about 24 miles west of Eureka, out in the genuinely lonely middle of the lonely stretch, shortly before 11 in the morning. According to the Nevada State Police, as reported by the Elko Daily Free Press and Colo, a westbound blue Mazda CX-5 swung into the eastbound lane, trying to pass a slower commercial truck directly into the path of the Ford. The impact drove both vehicles off the road and rolled the Mazda. Fields succumbed to her injuries and was pronounced dead at the scene. The driver who caused it walked away with suspected minor injuries. The passenger in that car reported none at all, 24 miles from the nearest town, in either direction. A 74-year-old woman from Ely, most likely on a road she had driven her whole life, killed by another driver's bet that the oncoming lane was empty. On this stretch, that bet almost always pays, because the oncoming lane almost always is empty. This time it was not. It had Francis Fields in it. That is the ladder, and it climbs one rung further than the road itself, because to see the ending the survival kit was truly warning about, you have to look just off Route 50 to the wider Nevada desert that surrounds it, where the same mechanism finishes the job it starts. On September 5, 2024, a 67-year-old California man named Alan Lohman drove an SUV into open desert in Nye County, south of the Route 50 country, and got it stuck between a ranch road and the highway. And here is the part that makes this the truest version of the whole warning. He was not out of contact. According to the Nye County Sheriff's Office, as reported by the Pahrump Valley Times and the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Lohman called 911 himself. He reported that he was lost and stranded. Help was already in motion, and then he did the thing that feels like action and is almost always the fatal choice. He got out and started walking. Deputies found his SUV first. On it, a note saying he was walking to Highway 160. The note outlived the walk. The preliminary investigation found that Lohman most likely died of heat exposure before he reached the road, in triple-digit temperatures. A search and rescue helicopter recovered his body. A volunteer off-road recovery team towed the SUV out the next morning. The car was fine. The car was always going to be fine. It was the man who could not sit still and wait for the help he had already summoned, and could not know that the highway he was walking toward was farther than his body could carry him in that heat. The phone worked. The phone was never the problem. The walk was the problem. That is the death the AAA advisor meant in 1986. Not the crash. The walk. The moment a person sitting in a stalled or stuck vehicle in the desert decides that doing something feels better than doing nothing, opens the door, steps out into the heat, and starts moving toward a horizon that is farther away than it looks. On Route 50, the horizon is almost always farther than it looks. The valleys are 10 and 15 miles wide. The clear desert air makes a mountain range that is 40 miles off look like an easy afternoon's walk. It is not, and the ground does not care what it looks like. Look at the count this corridor generates even in an ordinary year, just on the ends where people are dense enough to be found quickly. A two-vehicle crash before dawn on a Sunday in April 2026 near Glenbrook, on the Tahoe end, killed a 20-year-old Carson City man named Angel Vega and sent 3 more people to the hospital with serious injuries, according to the Nevada Highway Patrol via Colo. A white Tesla semi-truck, whose driver, by preliminary accounts at the scene, may have fallen asleep, failed to slow on US 50 in Dayton on the morning of June 28, 2026, at about 7:20, and struck a white Volkswagen Beetle from behind, then veered left and struck a red Toyota RAV4 stopped at the Traditions Parkway light. The couple in the Beetle, Sergio Villanueva III, 55, and Jennifer Villanueva, 49, both of Dayton, were killed and were identified by the Nevada Highway Patrol. They were known locally for volunteering with a dog rescue called Boxers and Buddies. It was the first fatal crash involving Tesla's electric semi anywhere. A Toyota Sequoia carrying 6 teenagers overcorrected out of a curve a mile west of Ely at 5:10 in the morning on June 27, 2025, struck a work zone sign and a guardrail and rolled, killing 2 of them, aged 16 and 17, in a car where 5 of the 6 were unbelted. A fatal crash near Fallon in January. The Austin crashes. The Eureka crash. And these are only the ones that reach the wire. Only the ones inside a reporting radius. Only the ones near enough to a town that someone found them fast enough for it to become news the same day. The center of the road, the true lonely 287, does not generate many news briefs. That is not because it is safe. It is because when something goes wrong out there, there is frequently no one close enough to report it in time for it to be news. The absence of headlines from the emptiest stretch is not reassurance. It is the emptiness itself, doing exactly what the emptiness does, which is to make sure that the worst of what happens on this road happens where no one is watching. Here is the thing I keep coming back to. In every one of these cases, the catastrophe began with something small and completely ordinary. A right-hand corner not quite finished. A drift toward a curb, a decision to pass a slow truck, a vehicle stuck in soft ground, a door opened, and a walk begun. On any other road in America, most of these are nothing at all. You finish the turn a beat late and correct. You clip a curb and swear. You wait 10 seconds and pass the truck safely because you can see a mile of empty oncoming lane. You get stuck, and you call a tow, and you wait in the car with the radio on. The gap between a minor annoyance and a fatal emergency on almost every road you will ever drive is enormous, and it is padded on every side by other people, other cars, other towns, gas stations, cell towers, the sheer human density of the country. Route 50 removes the padding. It takes the exact same small mistake and puts nothing at all underneath it. The distance between inconvenience and death is not measured in miles out there. It is measured in gallons, in degrees, in the number of vehicles that will pass your shoulder before the sun goes down, in whether one single person on the planet knows the road you took and the hour you should have arrived. There are people who will drive this road this summer with a quarter tank leaving Eureka and a phone that has not held a signal in 40 miles, and a loose plan to fill up in the next town, which is 70 miles of mountain passes away. Most of them will make it. The road does not need most of them. Some of them will watch the needle fall faster than it should on the long climb toward Pinto Summit and tell themselves it is fine. Some will coast to a stop on a valley floor and sit in an idling car, running the air conditioning, burning the fuel that was supposed to reach town on keeping cool in the shade they do not have, until the engine dies. And then the car will begin to heat, the way a parked car heats, fast, and at some point they will do what Alan Lohman did in Nye County, even if, like him, they have already called for help and been told it is coming. They will decide that sitting still feels like dying and that walking feels like living, and they will open the door and step out toward a town they cannot see. And somewhere out on that valley floor they will stop walking, and if they are found, the people who find them will say the same thing people have been saying about this crossing since 1860. They did not understand what they were driving into. The article is still famous. The name it coined is on the highway signs now, on the certificates, on the pins and the bumper stickers the survivors mail off for, all of it seeded by one public relations man who saw a photograph of a cowboy on a horse and understood exactly what he had. It was meant as a warning, and it became a souvenir, and both of those things are true at the very same time, and the road does not distinguish between them. It offers the same 287 miles to the tourist collecting stamps, and to the pioneer who's well blistered his hands, the same 17 passes, the same wide valleys, the same total absence of anyone coming, and it lets each of them find out for themselves which kind of afternoon they are going to have out there, in the heat, on the long, straight, empty middle of it, where the fuel gauge does not lie and the ground does not care, and the next town is always, always farther than it looks, on the loneliest road in America.